So I have my first impressions of the beta launch of xCloud worldwide, and I have quite a few thoughts to share, both good and bad. But I have to say, while the negatives are somewhat serious for me, I am optimistic for the future of what xCloud will look like down the line. With that said, subscribe to the channel for future xCloud coverage. I will be covering first-party titles, as well as doing a full review of xCloud. Also, I do cover the other cloud gaming services, so definitely subscribe if you haven't. Also, hit that thumbs up. Alright, so let's start this right away with my initial impressions so far, and I do preface this by saying that I was part of the Project xCloud beta this past year, and well, I just hadn't been impressed. The biggest gripe with xCloud has never been about the excellent games that have come along with it, or the ease of use. It's always been about the actual performance. As a gamer who is competitive and doesn't like the thought of any latency or lag involved in my gameplay, cloud gaming was something that I did not want to consider over a year ago. Ironically, some of my very first impressions of cloud gaming were actually with xCloud, and it just wasn't a pretty sight. You fast forward though to today, with 1 month left in the service before it launches, and I have to say there is some slight improvements to the performance from what I experienced a year ago, but it still does leave much to be desired, unfortunately. If I were to place an actual percentage of how stable my gameplay typically is, I'd say it's around 90% with a slight delay in my input that can be felt at all times. That is something that I just don't feel with a Google Stadia, or a Shadow, or even GeForce Now. By far, out of all the services that I have tried, my impressions of xCloud being at the bottom of pure performance has not changed. With that said, 90% of the time working is still playable, or a casual experience, and I think that is what xCloud for now is what it's meant to be, a supplement to your more hardcore gaming vice, not your main cloud service. With that said though, let's go ahead and touch on what I've seen now with the current beta, and so far outside of the gameplay, the UI in games, even though it doesn't have that full 100 yet, is pretty solid. The UI has a list of genres that you can jump into, it has a quick list for you to jump into games that you've already played quickly, and a search button to find games quicker. As for the current lineup of this beta, it's not too bad in my opinion, especially considering it's only 30 games. We have notable games like Gears 5, Hellblade Senua, one of my favorite games of the past few years, Grounded, a title that just came out weeks ago, another personal favorite of mine in State of Decay 2, Ori and the Blind Forest, even competitive survival online games like DayZ and Ark. There is games for pretty much every genre, including even fighting games like Streets of Rage 4, Forza for racing, and a huge indie title in Untitled Goose Game. And so far, all these titles are just the beta preview before the actual launch. Honestly, from that point of view, if I were paying $15 just for these current 30 titles on here, I'd actually be pretty satisfied, and there is still another 70 to go weeks from now. But jumping into all these games, all of them pretty much had the same issue, where I just didn't have stable gameplay throughout my gaming session. Some worked a bit better than others. Grounded barely gave me any issues, but then when I played State of Decay 2, the lag was definitely noticeable. It's frustrating because I don't have these issues with other services like Stadia or Shadow. I have 1 gig download, a phone from 2019, so it's not like I don't have ideal conditions. I pretty much have some of the most optimal setup that you can have, and I do worry that others who don't have these setups are not going to have a good experience with xCloud. Either way though, this is still the beta, and it hasn't gone through that full launch that will happen on the 15th of September, so I will continue to reserve my full judgment and review until then. But overall though, while stability was questionable, the games did look great. Even at 720p, I personally was loving how Hellblade Senua looked. I personally think it looks better than the Switch handheld, but I would have to do a side by side. And frankly, diving hours into State of Decay and some of these other games, I had a blast, and I plainly had fun and was thoroughly enjoying myself. But even though that was the case, a part of me was thinking, I'm just gonna download some of these games on my computer with Game Pass because I don't want to risk dying and losing a character, for an example, in State of Decay. Those feelings would just be amplified playing a game like a DayZ. In the end though, my recommendation at the moment is hold off until September 15th. Go into xCloud with open thoughts and low expectations, and possibly use xCloud as a supplement to your cloud gaming needs, because frankly $15 a month is not a lot when it does release a full lineup of 100 games. Essentially, it will be up to you if that value is worth it. But I will say this, even though the performance still leaves a lot to be desired, it has vastly improved from a year ago, where I couldn't come close to stable gameplay half the time. With all that said though, I will be covering first-party games and big titles coming to xCloud, and will have coverage of all of that as well as a full review in a month. So if you're interested in that content, be sure to be subscribed to this channel. Let me know your thoughts on xCloud down below. Will you guys be purchasing it? Are you excited for xCloud? Do you think that it will make its mark in cloud gaming? I personally have been having fun, but I am a little worried. Let me know what your thoughts are though down below. As always, I'm Sunny, and I'll see you guys in the cloud.